These projects are more than just highway design. They're more than just moving utilities out of the way.
One size doesn't fit all here when it comes to this kind of development.
This is environmental justice and a social equity type of a project.
In a way, it's kind of an engineer's dream, I guess.
There was no option for failure here.
All the stakeholders, federal, state, and local stakeholders coming together for the good of a community to build a road.
This is Lexington, Kentucky's second largest city, with a population of over 300,000, surrounded by rolling bluegrass hills and world-class horse farms. A college town with the University of Kentucky in the heart of the city. Lexington has a proud tradition of preserving its history and its historic buildings. But a surge in population, a wave of new development, and mounting traffic congestion put one small downtown neighborhood in the path of roadway improvements. Plans to alleviate traffic congestion in downtown Lexington had been started and stopped repeatedly over the decades. The challenge was to address the critical transportation need without unfair burden to the low-income, historic, and cohesive community of Davis Bottom.
There were plans for the original Newtown Pike project to go through this whole area that date back all the way to the 1930s. The Davis Bottoms area was going to be wiped out.
My father and his family moved down here, and that was in 1942. It's been 5 generations of Demases that have lived down in here. Started with my dad, with my grandmother, grandfather, my dad, my kids, and now I've got a granddaughter.
I'm Hazel. Come from Irving when I was 3 years old, Irving, Kentucky. I went to Lincoln School, started kindergarten, went up to 6th. I've lived here my whole life, so it seems like home.
Lexington has had a vision for this project since the 30s. That vision wasn't realized at that time. It came up in the 60s as a part of a somewhat different concept to actually bring an interstate spur into downtown Lexington.
As a young teenager, I used to come down here and hang out. There was a park here, and my friends and I used to hang out at the park.
My mom and my dad both grew up right here, so it has a very special meaning to my heart. And to think about when we were growing up, this is where we played.
In the 70s, there was an attempt to put an interstate design through this neighborhood, and the neighbors actually stopped that road project.
This video documents how a dedicated project team, including federal, state, and local agencies, worked together with residents to preserve a community while solving a transportation problem. The longer the project was tabled, the greater the transportation need became for downtown Lexington. By the mid-1990s, the Newtown Pike Extension was considered the best alternative to Lexington's congestion.
When you look at a map of Lexington and you're trying to get from the interstate to the University of Kentucky, to the University of Kentucky Hospital or Baptist Hospital or any number of hospitals in that corridor, to the football stadium, to shopping in Lexington off of the interstate. Right now you got to go through downtown to do any of that. And this provides a way to get around that congested area of downtown.
Removing a lot of the traffic that's flowing through the central business district will help not only the central business district to breathe a little easier, but it would be a little better for pedestrians and bicyclists.
It provides a great deal of connectivity from the south side to the north side. It creates almost a bypass around downtown. So as far as vehicular conductivity, it was a win-win for the city of Lexington.
The purpose and need that was eventually developed for the project emphasized the congestion, traffic flow, safety, and multimodal issues. Newtown Pike is a major exit off Interstate 64 and 75 into Lexington. Already a multi-lane roadway for several miles before reaching the downtown area, once it did reach the congested part of the city, it did not continue. That's where it ran into Davis Bottom. The new plan, the extension, called for continuing the multi-lane roadway to help traffic flow. Because of the potential impacts to the community, including social, cultural, and environmental effects, federal regulations under NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, would require an environmental analysis be prepared for any proposed action that would use federal funds. In 1998, after 60 years, funding for the Newtown Pike Extension was finally procured. A multi-agency partnership was formed to determine a course of action. The partnership included the Federal Highway Administration, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and the City of Lexington. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, later joined the team as a cooperating agency. This multi-agency partnership developed a set of guiding principles for the Newtown Pike Extension Project in 2002 that would serve as a foundation for the project moving forward. These principles address the traffic congestion, multimodal, and safety issues of the project, while also emphasizing community outreach, environmental justice, housing needs, and neighborhood aesthetics.
There was a common interest at the city, the state, and the federal government. I mean, everybody wanted to make something special out of this.
Once the agency defined a path for the project, a technical team was assembled to carry the project forward.
The Transportation Cabinet has a philosophy of having a multidisciplinary team, and on a project of that complexity, I think it's even more important. Of course, you've always got engineers that do the roadway design and the drainage and structures and those types of things, but we had environmental staff, archaeology, history. Also had some consultants on this project that you don't see on a lot of other projects. We had planning firms come in from out of state to help us with some urban planning concepts. An anthropologist and a sociologist from the University of Kentucky. That's the first time and maybe the only time I've been involved in a project where we've specifically hired an anthropologist to help us understand the community that we were working with. Through our consultant, we hired a neighborhood liaison to help us interact with the people that were going to be affected most by the project.
With the multi-agency partnership and multidiscipline team in place, the project proceeded through the transportation phases, including environmental review, design, right-of-way and utilities, and finally, construction.
When I arrived, we had several leaders discussing what should be the future of the Newtown Pike. It was at a crossroads at that point. Pam Miller was the mayor of Lexington at the time, and Mr. Codell was the Secretary of Transportation in Frankfurt.
What we were trying to do was to ensure that we went to the wall to address the environmental justice issue, to address NEPA, to address each and every type of regulation.
The project team would guide the project through the NEPA process, including development of a purpose and need statement, identification of project alternatives, environmental and engineering analysis, and mitigation of impacts.
We did follow the NEPA process. We were made aware that this was a special circumstance, but we still had to go out and do the community impact assessment and the socioeconomic evaluations and to determine and document what the situation on the ground was and identify what the potential impacts might be.
The environmental evaluations for the project identified a number of potential community impacts to address through the project development process.
This neighborhood was sort of forgotten because the road was coming.
The project had been looming over the neighborhood for so long. A lot of the homes that were rental homes were in decline because the landlords didn't really see a need to improve them or keep them up maybe to the standards that they should have.
And then the city itself didn't invest in sidewalks and other infrastructure, street lighting, sewers. And so you end up with this neighborhood that's really got deteriorated housing and deteriorated infrastructure.
To fully understand the past and present effects of the project on the community, a community impact assessment was prepared. The impacts documented in the CIA included the neighborhood decline, community cohesion effects, relocations, development pressures, and past impacts to adjacent neighborhoods that had cumulatively affected the Davis Bottom neighborhood.
In this case, we were looking not just forward with direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts. We were looking backwards to see what the scoping and the planning of the project had already done to the community, positive or negative. And we realized that there had been some adverse impacts to the community just by the concept being put out there of this project.
The community impact assessment concluded that the impacts to Davis Bottom were disproportionately high and adverse. Thus, mitigation would be required to offset these impacts in accordance with Environmental Justice Executive Order 12898.
This was environmental justice and a social equity type of a project that said we're impacting these residents to a significant degree, and so we've got to somehow bring equitable justice into our development.
The Newtown Pike Extension Project Purpose and Needs Statement had from an early stage established the need to avoid any further unfair or undue burden on the Davis Bottom community based on the history of the project and the area.
When I first started in the project, there was so much mistrust. A few blocks away in the Georgetown area, we had a road coming through, and many of the residents in that area were displaced. So the residents in the Newtown project thought the same thing was going to happen to them.
Rebuilding trust between the local residents and the project team, planners, and local agencies was a major challenge. The neighboring Rupp Arena project had already removed a chunk of the parcels and homes adjacent to Davis Bottom. In 1974, to make way for the construction of Rupp Arena and the Civic Center, approximately 145 dwellings, 50 apartment buildings, and 20 commercial establishments were demolished. By 2002, land values in downtown Lexington were at a premium, and development was encroaching on the Davis Bottom neighborhood.
And the problem that we were having now is that the trust, they would come in and say they're going to do one thing. It took them so long to get started, so we were scared that they were going to take it and not give us what they said it was.
They had been hearing about this road for 30 or 40 years, and they had lots of issues with government, meddling in your business and trying to tell you what to do. They had been made promises in the past that were not kept, and they were very skeptical.
Rebuilding trust would take some time and effort. The project team hired a community liaison and later a social worker to help with the communication process.
Our job, such as the social work department, was to help gain that trust.
And we would sit down together and strategize for hours on how we were going to get people involved.
Yes. So I think it did take some time for people to really begin to trust and to see that the promises were not going to be empty ones, and that they could begin to believe some of the things that they were hearing.
Well, this neighborhood is so rich, both immediately after the Civil War and really when we started working on this project. The stories are just awe-inspiring. And so we knew one of the goals of mitigation was to keep the neighborhood, the fabric of this neighborhood together, not just the people.
Back in the 60s when they started this integrating, we didn't know what that even meant because it was always different nationalities of the people that living down here. Hispanics, white, black, we all lived together down here. Everyone down here was family.
So in 2002, when we began the process of planning, we knew we had to get it right because it had been so long in the making, and we also knew that this was the heart of what we needed to preserve.
It's like a home, it's a community, just right here, and it's small, but it's our heart, it's where we grew up.
To rebuild trust and better understand the nature of the community, an anthropologist from the University of Kentucky was brought in. Dr. Juliana McDonald wrote a rapid assessment survey, trained the project team, and sent them into the community to talk to the residents in their homes.
It forced us out of our comfort zone, and it forced us to get to know people in the neighborhood, and it gave them an opportunity to get to know us a little bit.
I probably got to know them better that night, and I just had a whole new respect for the people down here.
But I think maybe more important to the process was their relationships that came out of that, because it seemed like that things got a little easier from that point forward, and at least in terms of the relationship.
By doing this kind of interviewing, as you might call it, or talking with people, you get at the reality of people's lives, and that can change everything for you.
But once we really got to go down into the neighborhood and meet the people, interview them, hear their side, hear their stories, it really helped to humanize the whole project, though, and the impact that this project was going to have on their lives. So it really, that was a turning point for me in the project.
It became a two-way street where The project was changing the residents, and guess what? The residents started to change the project members.
Various design and mitigation strategies were identified to address community impacts. Early on, Gene Cleckley from FHWA Atlanta came to Lexington to provide some training sessions and support for the team in developing solutions.
He challenged the entire project team to be creative, to stretch, to look for opportunities where we could look for ways to apply NEPA laws according to their intent, but also look for ways where we could develop the project, build the project in ways that would not create an unfair burden on the folks that lived in the neighborhood.
Because of the environmental justice issues, it allowed us to use mitigation funds for a variety of things that we might not normally think of or incorporate into a normal highway project.
As the current Secretary of Transportation likes to say, he wants to work in the art of the possible. And I think this team has done that for about 14 and a half, 15 years now.
Jose Sepulveda was great to work with, though. If he didn't know, he would find somebody that had an answer, or he would find someone or put us in touch with someone that could help us find that flexibility that we needed to deliver the project with the creativity needed, though, without having an unfair burden on the neighborhood at all, but still help us to ultimately build a roadway project that's much needed in Lexington.
Well, what had to be done was, instead of just a straight road going through, taking out the houses, taking out the other properties, and bulldozing right through, what happened was that there were all kinds of talks about boulevard and where the trees were going to be and where the parks were going to be.
The Newtown Pike Extension has developed in phases, and the first portion of the road was completed and opened to traffic in 2010. It extended the end of Newtown Pike south into Lexington. This portion of the roadway was renamed Oliver Lewis Way in 2013 in honor of Oliver Lewis, an African-American jockey who won the first Kentucky Derby in 1875. To meet the overall project goals of preserving the community while still providing a viable transportation facility and to provide mitigation for the community impacts, the project team decided on an urban village concept to support the boulevard option for the road. The project team brought in urban planners and architects to develop the urban village plan. The plan would address project impacts by providing housing improvements to local streets and infrastructure, and community features. The new boulevard will eventually extend through and around the new urban village, which has been renamed Davis Park.
Normally, traditionally, we'll look at the right-of-way that is needed to construct the improvement, the highway. And we look at those construction limits plus reasonable room there for maintenance, operations, accommodation of utilities. In this case, we were looking at mitigation actions that require right-of-way that went well beyond the footprint of the project. We were buying right-of-way as part of a project, as part of our mitigation strategy, beyond what was needed, all within the Uniform Act.
We were afraid that the land, once the road was built, that the land in the area was going to be brought up by prospectors or developers, and that they would come in and they would tear a lot of the existing housing down and they would replace that with more expensive housing. We knew that was going to put the residents in a place where they probably weren't going to be able to afford the new housing that was coming in.
Approximately 25 acres of land were purchased, and the urban village concept began to take shape.
How do we create a sense of place here that will be sustainable far beyond what was here originally? And when I say we're building a neighborhood, we're building a park, we're building institutional use, community facilities, we're building multifamily, some retail. So we're bringing all of this into one cohesive, sustainable neighborhood.
As the project team worked on the urban village plan, there were some other details to consider, such as how to keep the new housing affordable for the residents, how to manage the land where the new urban village would be developed, and in the meantime, what to do with residents when their houses were removed.
We, the project team, realized that we had to relocate the individual residents who were living down here. We essentially were going to buy their property and we were going to relocate them into mobile homes. These mobile homes had to be amenable to the city of Lexington as well as to the residents who were going to live there for 4 to 5 years while their final housing was going to be built.
Relocation housing payments provided compensation for those who chose to leave the new village being built. The plan also provided incentives for those who chose to stay in the temporary housing on site while waiting for the new housing to be completed. A tiered system was established to allocate housing in the urban village. Current residents were allocated housing first, followed by former residents and family, and then neighboring residents.
Because we were concerned about neighborhood cohesion with the Newtown Pike Extension Project, we wanted to incentivize people to stay in their neighborhood and keep those connections going.
Meanwhile, the project team looked for a way to manage the new village and keep the housing affordable for the residents. Federal regulations in the Uniform Act would require the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, once it purchased the land, to sell the land back to the residents at fair market value. This, however, would defeat the goal of affordability for this community and could affect the ability of the project team to mitigate for potential relocation and community cohesion impacts.
During the project development process, we came up with 3 possible ideas of ways that we might be able to keep the land and make it affordable for the residents to be able to stay here, which was the ultimate goal.
The option that best suited the project's goals was the community land trust concept,
which is ultimately what we decided to go with because it protected the property, it kept it affordable by using an entity to manage the property and hold it in trust.
In the community land trust system, people can own a house, but not the land. The land is owned by the land trust. Houses have to be sold to a homeowner, not an investor, and houses have to be owner-occupied.
One of the things that makes a land trust really unique is that it provides sustainable, affordable housing.
But for the residents, there was a catch to the community land trust. Residents could own their home, but not the land.
When this project first started, they was talking about land trust, and I didn't have an understanding of the land trust. I was a firm believer that my father always taught us that if you buy something, it's yours. You want the land, you want everything on it.
Well, we needed to work through the idea that the residents couldn't own the land, and that was that's something that really does require some explaining.
The first phase of Davis Park, with its new homes and apartments, was completed in 2014. To qualify for HUD funding, a noise wall was built between the neighborhood and railroad tracks and yard. Other mitigation efforts developed to address the community impacts identified for the project included improvements to the Carver Neighborhood Center, redevelopment of a community park, support for the neighborhood liaison and social worker discussed earlier, and a project to collect oral histories from community members. All of these efforts were made possible because of the partnership between the city, KYTC, FHWA, HUD, and other area stakeholders.
I think it's a great thing for the community, that it's something new.
I think a very important aspect of this was that we all agree when we sat down together, and a number of stakeholders did that, and we developed those guiding principles. That anchored the purpose of what we were pursuing. We knew that later on there might be differences, difficulties, challenges to overcome, but as long as we stood together on those principles, we knew that we were going to be able to address all the other issues.
And I like to call the guiding principles document our conscience for the project. It became the conscience that guided every decision that we made.
So we came up with a decision matrix that allowed us to make decisions not spontaneously or even by emotion, but just by what we all agreed was important.
The matrix tool helped the project team visualize a very complex decision that we had to make. In a way, it was more of a communication tool than anything else.
So you weigh the things you want, give them some weight, and then you can look at your choices and you know if something has all the things you need and if it has most of the things you want. And if that's the case, that's probably your best choice.
We monthly meetings were very important. Transparency was very important.
There was a lot of tension in the beginning, but now the residents are used to the engineers coming and the other project team members, and it's really become like a family gathering.
In those meetings, it was on a Thursday night. All the projects directors were there, the engineers were there, and they explained to them exactly every step of the way what was going on. And they had that patience to talk to them, to explain in human terms and not the technical terms.
They chose to walk along beside these people throughout the entire venture, throughout the entire process, and they have done that and continue to do it.
The tone had been set for the project, though, by Jim Codell, former Secretary of the Cabinet, by Jose Sepulveda. At the time that signed the guiding principles, Mayor Pam Miller. They set the challenge early for the project, though, that it was an important project.
What was wonderful about it from my point of view was the level of cooperation involved between the branches of government.
I think that we had a pretty special project team. We had a project team that developed a chemistry with each other. We had a project team that respected everyone's opinion, but also expected that people would share their opinion. So when we didn't agree on something, we had some pretty tough conversations about how to resolve those differences. In that process, though, we instead of growing apart, we grew together. And because I think we all grew to where we felt like that this was a problem that was worth solving, and that we were determined to try to figure out a way to make this project work.
The credit goes to the team because they knew the rules well, so they knew how to work within the rules, but getting not necessarily just at the center of the rules, but at the edges of the rules and still be within the rules.
I think that we didn't have any particular special skills or gifts that any other team doesn't have, but I think that we didn't give up. We just kept pushing.
Support for the Newtown Pike Extension Project by city leaders, state transportation leaders, and city, state, and federal staff has continued over the project's many years. Today, development of the Newtown Pike Extension and the Davis Park Urban Village continues. In 2015, additional housing units are scheduled for completion. The initial portion of the roadway project was completed on the north side of the project. The remaining phases of the project will connect the end of Oliver Lewis Way with a new entrance to the University of Kentucky. These additional phases will also include the construction of commercial space, institutional space, and additional family homes. The urban planners and architects have continued to work with input from the residents to design the exteriors and interiors of structures.
All the homes are designed to be 20% more efficient than the International Energy Code. So to produce lower energy bills for the residents, which means longer term, more affordability for each one of them.
The mitigation dollars helped us do a higher level, higher quality of a house than we probably could have ordinarily done. And that was really huge in turning a lot of the development of this as you see now. I don't think they believed, even though we kept telling them over this long process, you know, they didn't believe it until they start seeing it built, and then they could come in, touch and feel and see what it was about. Then they said, wow, this is really nice.
When I first come down here, you know, I was like, wow. It's like just like I had moved somewhere else, not on the same street, you know. And then I was sitting out here one night and I was looking and I was like, I'm looking at the Lexington, Kentucky skyline. I thank God I lived to see it.
Hazel is well, we're proud of her. She has graduated from what Habitat requires. Yeah. She has her hard hat ready for construction of her house. And I'm hoping that the project team will do some volunteer work to help build Hazel's house. Would you trust us with that, Hazel?
Sure.
To see the entire neighborhood and the folks that we'd worked with so long, to see them happy made me extremely happy that day. I could not have been more pleased with any project that I've ever worked on in my entire career than to go down to the groundbreaking and then the ribbon cutting when we finally had the houses completed.
The vision is becoming a reality for the city, the neighborhood, and the roadway. The project features including the Urban Village Plan, housing, community land trust, multimodal facilities, neighborhood infrastructure, community park redevelopment, neighborhood center improvements, community liaison, social worker, and oral history project, serve as more than just mitigation for community impacts. They demonstrate how transportation planning, project development, design, and mitigation can be conducted to improve livability in a community while addressing transportation needs.
I think the Newtown Pike Extension Project is a very unique project because it's a project with a heart. It looks at these displaced residents not as just people that have to be moved out of the way, but people that they want to work with and walk along beside of. I think that the displaced residents are the human face of the project.
If I may say, this has been the most challenging, but yet the project that I have liked the most in almost 35 years in Federal Highways, because it's about people, and it's a chance to do something right for a community.